always believed that the truth has a way of finding its voice, no matter how deeply you bury it.
I just never thought it would speak at a time when I was least prepared to listen.
For years, I lived with a version of myself that was carefully edited,
Trimmed just enough to be acceptable, just enough to be loved without questions. I didn't think of it as deception at first. I thought of it as survival.
I told myself that some truths are too heavy to carry openly,
That love sometimes needs protection from realities that might scare it away. And so, quietly, without ceremony or dramatic intent, I let a lie settle into my life and make itself comfortable. When I met my husband, everything felt effortless. He was calm where I was anxious, steady where I had always felt rushed. Our conversations stretched into the night, touching dreams, fears,
and future plans with a tenderness that made me feel seen in a way I hadn't before. We laughed easily, argued gently,
and somehow understood each other without needing to explain every thought.
From the beginning, he talked about timing, about building a family, about growing old with intention.
And every time the subject came close to age, I felt something tighten inside me, like a door slowly closing. I remember the first time he asked, casually, almost playfully.
It wasn't an interrogation,
just curiosity.
The kind of question lovers ask without expecting consequences.
I hesitated for half a second too long, and in that space, fear made the decision for me.
I said the number that felt safer, the one that aligned better with his expectations, the one that allowed the conversation to move forward without discomfort.
He smiled, nodded, and the moment passed. I told myself I would correct it later. I promised myself that honesty would come when things felt more secure. But security has a way of constantly redefining itself.
There is always another milestone to reach before you feel brave enough to be vulnerable. After we became official, I told myself I'd tell him once the relationship was stable.
After we moved in together, I said I'd tell him once we settled. After he proposed, I told myself it would be cruel to ruin such a happy moment with something so unnecessary. And after we married, I convinced myself that the truth no longer mattered, that the love we had built was proof that age was irrelevant. Yet the lie didn't disappear. It lived quietly in the background, present in subtle ways I learned to navigate carefully. Birthdays became performances. Stories from my past required editing. Dates and timelines had to be rehearsed before family gatherings. I laughed along when people joked about our age gap, even though my chest burned with the knowledge that the gap wasn't what he thought it was. Every time he spoke about the future with certainty, I felt the weight of my silence pressing harder against my conscience. I loved him deeply. That was never a lie. And perhaps that's what made everything more dangerous. Because when you love someone, the idea of hurting them feels unbearable. I didn't want to see disappointment in his eyes. I didn't want to watch him reevaluate our entire relationship through the lens of a number. I convinced myself that my intentions mattered more than my honesty, that protecting his peace was an act of love, not betrayal. There were moments when I almost told him. Late at night, when the house was quiet and we lay facing each other in the dark, sharing thoughts that felt too raw for daylight. Sometimes he would speak about trust, about how honesty had been missing in his past relationships, about how much he valued transparency. Each time my heart would race, my mouth would dry, and I would tell myself, not tonight, tomorrow, soon, eventually, but eventually never came. The night everything changed felt painfully ordinary. There was no storm, no argument, no warning. We had eaten dinner together, talking about small things, work stress, weekend plans, nothing memorable. The television played softly in the background while he looked through my laptop for an old document he needed for insurance paperwork. I sat nearby, scrolling through my phone, barely paying attention. I had no idea that the life I had carefully constructed was about to fracture quietly. He stopped typing. At first, I didn't notice. Then the silence stretched too long to ignore. When I looked up, his expression was unreadable, his eyes fixed on the screen. He didn't say my name right away. He just sat there still, as if he were trying to understand something that didn't make sense. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm, but there was something unfamiliar in it, something restrained. "Can you come here for a second?" he asked. I stood up, my pulse already quickening. He turned the laptop toward me. On the screen was a scanned copy of an old document, one I hadn't thought about in years,
My birth year sat there plainly, unfiltered, undeniable. I felt the room tilt slightly, as if gravity had shifted. "Why does this say a different year?" he asked. For a moment, I considered lying again. The instinct was immediate, almost automatic. I could say it was a mistake, an old error, something easily explained. I even opened my mouth to laugh it off. But something in his eyes stopped me. This wasn't a moment that could be smoothed over. The truth had already stepped into the room. I sat down slowly, my hands trembling. I could feel my heartbeat in my ears. I told him everything. Not all at once, not eloquently, but honestly. I explained how scared I had been, how small the lie had felt in the beginning, how it grew without my permission. I told him how much I loved him, how terrified I was of losing him, how I never intended for it to go this far. He listened without interrupting. That silence was unbearable. When I finished, I waited for anger, for raised voices, for accusations. Instead, he exhaled slowly and leaned back in his chair. "I don't care about the age," he said. Relief flooded me so suddenly that I almost cried. My shoulders relaxed for the first time in years. But then he looked at me again, and his eyes were heavy. "I care that you didn't trust me with the truth." That sentence settled between us like a wall. He didn't yell. He didn't walk away. He didn't accuse me of manipulation or deception. He just looked tired, disappointed. And that hurt more than anything else could have. He told me he needed time to think, that he wasn't angry, just confused. He said he felt like he didn't fully know the person he married, and that scared him. That night, we slept in the same bed, but it felt unfamiliar. His body faced away from mine, the space between us charged with unspoken thoughts. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment where I could have chosen honesty and didn't. I wondered how something so small could suddenly feel so enormous. The days that followed were worse. Not because of arguments, but because of distance. He still spoke to me, still asked how my day was, still shared meals with me. But there was a caution in his tone, a hesitation in his touch. It felt like he was observing me, recalibrating his understanding of who I was. And I couldn't blame him. I had asked him to love a version of me that wasn't complete. I told myself that things would improve, that time would soften the edges of his disappointment. I tried to be more open, more present, more honest than I had ever been. But honesty after exposure feels different. It feels reactive instead of intentional. And I worried that no matter how transparent I became, it would always feel like too little, too late. One evening, about a week after he found out, he asked me a question that caught me off guard. He asked what else I hadn't told him. It wasn't accusatory. It was quiet, curious, and terrifying. I assured him there was nothing else, that this was the only secret I had ever kept from him. He nodded, but he didn't look convinced. And that look followed me for days. I started noticing small changes. He locked his phone when he used to leave it face up. He spent longer hours at work. He became thoughtful in a way that felt distant, like his mind was elsewhere even when he was sitting next to me. I told myself I was imagining it, that paranoia was just guilt wearing a mask, but the tension didn't ease. Then one night, as we sat together in the living room, he said something that made my stomach drop. He said he had been thinking about trust, about how fragile it is, about how once it's questioned, it changes the way you see everything. He said he wasn't sure how to move forward yet. Not because he didn't love me, but because love alone didn't answer the questions now living in his head. I asked him if he regretted marrying me. He didn't answer right away. That silence felt longer than any argument ever could. When he finally spoke, he said he didn't know, that he needed time, that he needed space to understand his feelings. He said he wasn't leaving, but he also wasn't pretending everything was fine. And then he stood up and went to bed early, leaving me alone with my thoughts. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying his words, searching for meaning in what he hadn't said. I wondered if love could survive this kind of fracture, if trust could ever be rebuilt once doubt had taken root. I told myself that at least the truth was out now, that whatever happened next would be real. But that thought offered little comfort. The next morning, he was gone when I woke up. A note on the kitchen counter said he had gone for a drive and would be back later. I stared at the handwriting, familiar yet suddenly foreign.
I tried to prepare myself for every possible outcome. Reconciliation, counseling, distance, separation. I told myself not to panic. Hours passed, then more hours.
My phone remained silent.
As the sun began to set, I heard his car pull into the driveway. My heart raced.
I stood up, smoothing my clothes, rehearsing what I would say. The door opened slowly. He stepped inside, his face unreadable.
He didn't greet me. He didn't sit down.
He just looked at me for a long moment. "There's something we need to talk about," he said.
And in that moment, standing there in the quiet of our home, I realized that my secret hadn't just revealed my age.
It had opened a door to something far more uncertain.
Something I wasn't sure either of us was ready to face.
He took a step closer, and before he could continue, my phone vibrated in my hand with a message from an unknown number. I looked down at the screen.
And everything changed again.